We look at the way we approach the field of seniors care perhaps differently than other organizations because we are a family and we're approaching it from a family perspective. The term village, or at least trying to get across the idea of a community, because I think it's a foolish man who thinks his success is only due to himself. When I walk into our villages or when we're designing a new village, I oftentimes think of my grandparents. It gives me shivers up my spine. These two people who are long deceased are still having a big impact on our world today.
What I remember about Grandpa is that you could tell he had a real kind of genuine interest in people as individuals. It didn't matter if it was the 35-year-old living in Bethany Lodge who had mental illness, or the 90-year-old who's living there as an elderly person. The principles that really guided his life and motivated him are really the values that still exist in our organization today.
You always kind of look back to your grandparents, and if I look back to them, my grandma Becker was kind of the accountant of the operation. You know, I look at people like that and it kind of inspired me to do what I'm doing today. Then I kind of realized it wasn't my grandfather that was always focused, it was my grandmother keeping him focused, and I really got an appreciation.
I was 10 years old, I believe. He bought what at that time was a private hospital. And so he built an apartment onto this private hospital. We lived there as a family, and so I developed a real partnership and relationship with the patients.
Grandpa Schlegel had a real gift at first of all recognizing the need, but his greater gift was even the creativity to come up with solutions to meet those needs. And I guess that's what you're seeing here today is really the results of that kind of thinking. That's the way Grandpa Schlegel was, very humble, very modest. So Dad, saw that from his father, that in order to advance something in this world, to advance something special, it has to be efforts of many, many people.
It was in their DNA. He saw opportunities where others saw problems, and I don't know how you'd call it, through osmosis, so I picked up the qualities and many of the attributes which my father had. I think my boys maybe got things in the same way. My father had a very substantial influence on me. When I was in high school, my dad had 5 farms, as I recall. He already turned those 5 farms over to me to operate. So after I finished grade 13, I went to the University of Western Ontario through the honors program in physical education and also mathematics. I was getting offers from several universities to start teaching. My first teaching job was at the University of Windsor, where I taught for 4 years, and I was actually finishing off my PhD at the time into psychology. As I continued in my studies, I got a call from the University of Waterloo, and they made me a very attractive offer. I did then come to Waterloo and started teaching here for the next 20 years. So during that time frame then, while I taught, I was doing my own business and it was growing, and I was looking after my dad's farms, and I was going to university at the same time. But then by 91, the outside work just became too much, and I then resigned from the university. In 2000, roughly, government came out with a major allocation of new long-term care beds. We applied, made 6 applications, and were successful on 5 of them. So that expanded us all of a sudden from 2 to an additional 5. Lo and behold, just the earlier part of this year, the ministry comes out with an additional 5,000 beds. So then we put in 10 applications. We were awarded 6 out of our 10 applications. This now will be another major expansion, similar to the one that we went through back starting in the year 2000, and which kept us hopping for the next 10 years. So for the next 10 years, starting this year, 2018, we'll be hopping again. I was very deliberate. I'm not going to twist their arms. I'm not going to coax them in to the business. What I will do is I will keep the doors open for them to walk through.
I always, truthfully, knew I was going to be part of the family business. I remember sitting on the tractor down at the farm in London, scuffling beans. It took days on end to scuffle a 100-acre field. 14 years old, I'd be thinking and dreaming on the tractor, and it was always about kind of what the organization could become, you know. And so I always knew I'd be part of the family business.
And in 93 or so is both when Jamie and myself joined the business. And at that time, Jamie, Dad, and myself sat down and kind of decided, where do we want to take this? And Dad had said he really enjoys what he's doing, but if without the boys coming back, this is probably about as big as I want to get. And Jamie and I assured him that, you know what, we had our CAs now and we want to get involved in the family business, and no, we intended to grow things.
I basically said to them, you've got to have the interest, the passion, and want to be part of this work. But I've seen too many mistakes where a father has wanted their children to be like him, and in many cases it has failed.
I know it's something that is special to Dad to have the three of us involved, because it was by no means guaranteed that all three of us would kind of migrate into the family business. Brother Jamie and Rob are two people I looked up to as people and as business leaders. It took me a bit longer to kind of find my way. They have been, you know, kind of example for me and an inspiration for me.
I'm happy I started on the ground floor in all our businesses. All of my jobs gave me appreciation to what's it really like to be working with the residents hand in hand. And quite frankly, for the nursing homes, that's kind of the best part. Everybody had a life, and they had a lot of wisdom to share for you. And all you had to do to gain that was take the time to talk to them. If I had an extra 10 minutes and you saw somebody sitting by the door, take that extra 10 minutes to sit down and talk to them. And all of a sudden you start talking and hearing what they did. And I was just mesmerized by everything they had done. And all of a sudden you realize it's a half hour later and you're still there talking. But there were lessons to be learned in that. They're the ones that have come up with all our good ideas. It's not us.
Dad was never one to say, okay, you're my son, you're the president and you're the vice president. You had to work your way through, and that meant starting at those jobs that were the most hands-on. And that was a great philosophy. That was a great introduction into what we were doing.
It's remarkable how all of them had a passion for wanting to work in the field of seniors care. And they really bring all these different qualifications and attributions to the overall scene. And it's just a blessing that that has occurred.
When we used the word village, it was a very conscious choice. It meant a lot to us, and it really was kind of a bit of a description of what we were doing. And we didn't just fall upon that name because it's kind of in vogue. It's because it really does kind of encapsulate what we're doing.
We designed the building with a main street and in the center of town square. The streets were all gridded. They were straight. There were also landmarks, so there'd be vistas, so people could always identify where they were in the town. So we arranged the continuum like a town with a roof over top.
And this is meant to give you the feeling of being outdoors. And one of the main ways of doing that is creating height and light. The gazebo was kind of the central focal point. We call it kind of the nexus of the town square and the main street coming together. The main street is kind of the social spine of the village that connects all the different neighborhoods into it.
We feel our older adults are such a resource to our community, to our society, that they should be placed at the center of our community. That's why these villages are on main streets, at main intersections, very visible, very prominent, so people can find them easily. We connect a lot with the community around us, community groups coming in, still part of our community, part of our world, and contributing to it.
Dad has always viewed these villages and always talked about them as not just kind of islands unto themselves. He's always talked about these being really kind of community centers for seniors. serving not just the residents who live here, but residents in the broader community.
My grandmother, it was her maiden name, and her side of the family was known for hospitality and cooking and bringing people together. So we thought it would be very appropriate to name this place after her.
We may have at Winston Park 500 seniors who live here as residents who actually are villagers and who sleep overnight here. But we may have another 5,000 villagers who live out in community but still are connected to the village.
You get a sense of being part of the larger community up here.
The land was more than what the nursing home needed, so that we could put on a continuum of care on each site. We always bought land in very prominent locations so that the seniors would be at central points in the life of that society. Rather than pushing them off to the far end of a subdivision, we bought land that was on the busy roads at major corners where there was all kinds of action.
It wasn't all that long ago that we described our neighborhoods by kind of the care level. So there was main floor retirement or assisted living or memory care. How do we brand it more that reflects the Schlegel family? Egerton, the previously assisted care floor, Egerton was the location of the first nursing home that Grandpa started in 1953. And so we said, well, that was a care environment with relatively heavy care, and so we said, well, let's associate that with assisted care. The Emma's neighborhood. That's the story of my grandmother.
My grandmother, Emma Schlegel, lived with dementia in her later years. She was not accommodated in the way that we would have liked. She was a very proud person, a very energetic person, a very independent thinker, especially for that time as a woman. She was very independent. And to see her independence taken away from her personality taken away from her because she's such a bubbly person, it was heartbreaking to see. And when we were thinking about our memory program, we were always thinking about Grandma.
Remember, you matter and somebody cares. You've got something to share. Oh yeah. You've got something to share. Excellent.
I was actually that afternoon gone to watch a hockey game. So normally Jamie and I would have been at the hockey game. My brother Rob, I think, was at Friends, and Dad would have been at the office. And it could have been hours until help arrived, and that most certainly would have been too late. So there was a mini miracle that happened that day, that there were actually people home.
She collapsed one afternoon. I thought, well, she just fainted. Well, then she started turning gray, and the boys were crying all along. I said, she'll be all right. I then called the ambulance.
Dad soon realized that it was something serious, that when she collapsed, it wasn't just kind of being lightheaded, and assessed her. And thankfully, Dad, with a bit of his medical background and some discussions with the nursing staff, determined the fact that she needed more help than was available at Grand River. So she was later that day transported down to University Hospital. Dad was told, I think 4 times in the first week, that Mom was not going to live the next 24 hours.
So we bless this food now for our bodies, that they may stay strong, and we bless our family. And
each time she lived beyond what they thought she was going to, the next 24 hours, they said, well, but she's never going to be conscious. When she was conscious, well, she's never going to be able to speak. Then she was able to speak a little bit. Well, she's never going to be able to walk. In time, she was able to walk.
It very much opens your eyes that it's a part of life I would never thought of. And the struggles that my mom had to go through to even just to get out of the hospital, to be at home with us again. It was about a year's journey. And you look at the little things in life differently. You celebrate the little things in life that you kind of took for granted. And it's interesting, something like that can really break you apart as a family, or it can bring you all together. And it was a real rallying cry to bring us all together. And we got closer than ever.
In many ways, the impact Mom has had is really since her stroke. So I talked to the new team members and I said, we have a value It's called a positive can-do attitude. That's not kind of a theoretical concept for our family. I said, I'm quite convinced that Mom would not have survived that first night or the first week in hospital had it not been for this sheer will to somehow find a way through. This is not an idle concept. This is something that's very real for our family because we have a walking example of it in the form of Mom.
She could relate to others in a way that I certainly couldn't. She's gone through what they are going through, and she was always able to pick up a conversation. I wonder where Barb is. Well, there she was sitting with someone, and they were just talking away a mile a minute. You know, it's that old saying, when you're given a lemon, make lemonade. You know, I know that's sort of hokey, but it is very true in that case, where she made a lot of lemonade in amazing ways.
My highlights of my week is to go up there. It's surprising. I like to visit with them, but I find it getting less and less time to visit with them because I spend more and more time with each person because you get to know them. I just enjoy being with them. So, yeah, with each person, yeah.
People sometimes wonder, why do I keep expanding? And I always say that it's not to make more money, but what my real return on my investment and my efforts is when I walk into one of our villages and I see the joy on the faces of the residents. When I see that they're having a better life, that's what is my return on my investment.
You know, I think it's about being the best. I don't think it's about being the biggest. The fact that we're a social model in terms of care for seniors. And now when I look at mental health and addictions, there's no real leader across Canada.
Homewood, we just purchased that in 2010. It is one of the leaders in Canada for mental health and addictions. Most mental health hospitals discharge a person simply based on symptoms being reduced. Often it takes a series of follow-up booster sessions. So we have these specialty clinics which can follow up core treatment they received at one of our hospitals.
We think we've come a long way in terms of removing the stigma, and perhaps we have, but we have a longer way to go. There are so many people who are suffering needlessly, and our communities are suffering as a result of it as well. The potential to do good is huge.
There's the Schlegel UW Research Institute for Aging, almost the personification of Dad, his academic career and his business career coming together. I can't think of too many people who would be in that position to make that happen. Bringing the University of Waterloo in, bringing the Conestoga College, a training piece together, and doing unbelievable things in the area of research in aging. We have to get better, smarter at how we take care of our seniors, and also more efficient at it.
The people in the field are working alongside the researchers as to what are the areas in which they need research. We need continuous innovation in caring for our elders. The Research Institute is driving innovation.
We talk about creating an environment where our residents can engage in community, be socially connected with one another, and where they can find life purpose and meaning. We create a village where all villagers can engage in community and find meaning and purpose in their lives. Whether it's a villager who's a team member, or a villager who's a resident, or a family member or volunteer, having those distinctions fall away between a team member and a resident and a family member. Just have everyone simply living successfully in community, further kind of developing the village model to in fact take it to that, to be what's the next level.
And if I look at where we're at right now, we're still evolving, but I mean, I feel pretty good that even if we weren't around, we got the right people to carry the tradition forward.
It's really going back to Grandpa Schlegel in that idea of community building. And that's what really, when we're talking about business opportunities, when we're talking about growth opportunities or opportunities for innovation, it's always grounded in that one question of community building. Is it serving that purpose or not? And that's really our criteria at the end of the day.
I really hope that's an organization that's grounded in the exact same values that we're grounded in today, that we haven't lost our way in terms of who we are as individuals. It'd be like becoming successful but losing your soul. If we stay true to who we are in those family values, and the value of innovation, then I think we have a chance of being that.